and I want to thank you for taking time from your valuable schedule to be with me. I have two filmmakers, good friends of mine from many years going back, who are joining me today, Rob Freeman and Mark McNabb, who are guys who gallivant around the world looking for UFOs. And they are both originally in Ontario, but now they're also moving around. Rob's still in Ontario, and Mark, I think, is now in another country. But
Yeah.
it's an interesting story. They came to Manitoba and did some of the UFO stories here and sort of gave us some attention. And now they've come out with a book. So I want to welcome both of them. And we're going to tell some stories today about UFOs and about films and photography and the book that they've coming. So Rob and Mark, welcome and thank you for joining me today to tell your stories of your UFO adventures.
This is the book. You saw my computer moving. It's because I had it underneath to hold the computer up higher.
Oh, there you go.
But this is the book. This is the book that we put together, and it's got lots of pictures, stories. It's all true stuff that's happened to us. It's all our experiences, and it's really the first 2 years. And as Mark says, we learned so much, Grant. Like, we've gone into it with open minds and with no expectations and no preconceived ideas. It's just like Mark believed that as young boys, we called them in. And we continued on that idea, and boy, we were not disappointed.
Now we'll get to the stories, but we got to go back to what I always ask experiencers, and that's this whole idea about my experience with Charlie Red Star. Was I had this film guy who they had it on the ground, and they knew they had to get it. This TV crew, and they knew you had to get it. And then the guy said to me, and I didn't pick it up for 2 years. Where the guy said, and I said, "This thing's going up and down. I got to get something on film. So next time it glows up, I'm going to shoot." And as he pushes the trigger, this thing jumps in the air, and I'm going. 2 years later, it's like, I didn't have my accident. So a question about yours, you hear this and you know from experience talking with people, what was the UFO doing? And are you part of something bigger? Did you agree to be a part of this? Looking back on this thing, what do you think? Do you think they wanted you to go down this road?
Yeah, looking back, I think it was all a big setup, if you ask me. We were, coming out of Scouts, seeing that and being so interested in it. I mean, I was scared, but I was excited at the same time.
Yeah.
And then, the whole validation, because I have to say, so many people are in the closet around this. Like, they're afraid to tell about their experiences for fear of being made fun of. As they say, people's worst fear is speaking in public and being laughed at or being made fun of, and nobody wants that. People will go to the nth degree to protect themselves against that. Yes, I do believe it was a bit of a setup now, because now I don't believe that was coincidental, that literally 2 weeks later, as young boys, we went up there totally open-minded, excited, and to see it, and we did. We saw them. I mean, there was hundreds of these, and we have continued on with that. I'm so glad that Mark proposed this to me. We literally agreed we're going to make contact. We want to see craft. We want to meet ET beings. We want the whole enchilada. And no part of this has ever been scary. Like, I was probably more scared that night, and when I came out of Scouts, when I thought this thing was coming lower and it was going to maybe take me away, I was more scared that night than I've ever been through 9 years of expeditions, Mark.
Oh yeah, 9.5. It'll be 10 years.
Yeah. So I believe that, it is a setup, and I believe there's a reason why Mark and I were put together, because he's a documentarian through movies and now through print media, and we feel we have a purpose to experience all this stuff and to tell others about it. And we don't have any agendas. Like so many of these Hollywood movies, it's all about fear. And, as we've mentioned before, we were approached by one of the networks to do a series, and I had the contract in front of me. Marcus and I had it, and The only thing they wanted was that we bring the fear factor into it.
Yeah.
And Mark and I talked, we can make money here. And we said, no. We said, if we bring something that's not authentic into this, then our experience, we felt that, the ETs are watching and they're going to see that we're being, we're going down the wrong road now. We're being paid off. We're making stuff up that's just not true. So we actually turned the contract down, and we turned the money away. And we said, no, we continue to pay for this ourselves, and we will report exactly what we're experiencing. So it's authentic. And I think whoever they are, Grant, continues to see that. I mean, we can list many examples of people that have kind of gone off the path, and they're just not getting the experiences anymore.
Yeah.
For us, we relish the experiences, and we want to get those out to the world and people who are interested in hearing about it. I mean, it's a real thing that's happening. We're experiencing it, and we want to share it with people.
Yeah, the other thing I noticed with your sighting, which is similar to mine, was the fact that it really wasn't doing anything. I remember the second night I saw Charlie Red Star, as it was flying away, I was thinking, that's pretty cool. That could be extraterrestrial, but what's it doing? It's not doing anything. It's like it's just flying along. And it's like yours, it's just flying back and forth. And it's like, this is just sort of like entertaining you. And the other thing was that that I had, was my friend who actually was driving the car at the time. He's actually in the hospital now. He's very, very sick in the hospital, but he never talked about it. It's like your friends walked away. They said, okay, we're going home now. And it's like you got caught and you fell off the edge of the earth. And I had lots of people. I took tours of people out to see this stuff, and they all saw it and they went, yeah, it's kind of cool. And then they just went on with their life. And I couldn't let it alone. And the same thing happened to you. It's almost like this idea where you got dragged in and you reacted different than everybody else.
Yeah, and I really, over the years, of course, we get very involved with our lives. There's
Yeah.
school, there's university, there's, getting a job, there's working, family. So there's so many things that move into your life that you don't have time for it really to think about it. And over the years, I always questioned, was this something from the US government or even the Canadian government?
Yeah.
Or was it truly extraterrestrial? And it was just a big question mark. Like, I would kind of go one way thinking, oh, well, it's the US government because of this, and this. And then my brain would say, no, but what about this, Rob? That's impossible. They're dealing with physics that we don't even know anything about. So then I would head that way thinking it's extraterrestrial. So I never really knew for sure. And this is why when Mark approached me, I was very excited to start going around the world. I was very good at photography when I was a kid. I was in the camera club. So I understood all the physics of how cameras work and what you can do with cameras and stuff. So for me, it was something that would be very exciting, something very interesting. And it's been a total passion project for us the entire time.
Yeah. So let's go to the experiences. So you're down the rabbit hole and you want to get another contact, which I guess is what it comes down to. Is like once you've seen it once, it's like you go back out and you're trying to make contact. So what's the bottom line? Did you make more contact, and how do you talk about your array of cameras, because you've got probably a
Yeah.
unique setup that you set up and you did have some money. You did get lucky and get some money that
Yeah.
you could afford to do that. So go
Yeah.
through how that process went.
Sure. I started a company called London Telecom. And for example, we didn't have competition for long distance communication in Canada. And, I knew all about this kind of stuff, phones and electricity and stuff from a very young boy. And the bottom line is that I was one of the first to go down that road in Canada. So I was one of the first competitors to the phone companies. And I started it in 88 and sold it in 99 and sold it for, a good amount of money. And so I did have the wherewithal to be self-financed. And I think that's important, Grant, because, if you become financed from somebody else, then, it's the golden rule. The guy with the gold makes the rules, right? It's the
Yeah.
golden rule. And, if it's a network financing you, then, they're going to lay down the rules, and you're going to have to, you're going to have to follow them along and go according to what they want. We don't have to do that. So I'm so happy about that. It's totally authentic. And we started out starting to experiencing a lot of cool, what we call cool high strangeness. Yeah. And you asked me about cameras, Grant. So it's evolved to the point that we've got thermal that detects heat. It's the black and white thermal. So it's captured things that you can't see with your own eyes. We've got the traditional night vision, the green night vision, zoom and wide angle. We've got the visible zoom and wide angle. We've got the full spectrum. The full spectrum is the one that caught the Monroe flasher there, a year or so ago. So we've got
We'll
all
talk
this.
about that so people know what you're talking about.
The Monroe flasher. Yeah, we had Chris Bledsoe. Chris Bledsoe was there.
Oh,
Okay.
so you did follow up on Chris Bledsoe.
Yeah, he was there, and I became very good friends with him. And
You're
to
down
make
in North Carolina? Is that where you are?
that was at the Monroe Institute.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You told me about being there. The bizarre stuff that was going on there.
Yeah, and it was sort of the first annual conference on the UFO consciousness connection. Chris and I had gotten into a little dispute just prior to that. Okay, over what was seen in the sky. He was calling it a UFO. I was saying it was a satellite. So we were kind of, bumping heads. Well, we agreed to make up. Like we were in quite a heated discussion. And then all of a sudden we realized this is not helpful to the cohesiveness of our group. So I apologized to him. I went over, we hugged. And right away, when we sort of had that connection of reconciliation,
Yeah.
Dan all of a sudden saw this thing in the sky that was it was a light. It was just sitting there, and it was like a flash. And I pointed the cameras up at it, and it went for quite a long time, and it just sat there in one spot. And so I know after the event I sent the video to Dave Palachuk from MUFON Canada. And he said, which way were you facing and so on? And because I thought maybe it was a geosynchronous satellite. But Dave said, no, it's not. He said there would not be a geosynchronous satellite at that spot in the sky. You would have to look south and above the equator to see a geosynchronous satellite. And we were not facing south. We were facing east. He said it's impossible for there to be a geosynchronous satellite in the sky where you saw that. He said they have to be over the equator. They're moving with the Earth. Yes, they're in orbit, but they're moving at the same speed of the Earth, the rotation. So they appear to be sitting there, right? And what we saw was not a geosynchronous satellite. So that was a pretty neat thing. There's that consciousness connection. And it's funny because, everybody was a little upset that Chris and I were in dispute. Okay, the emotions were flying. Okay, and we were in a big group, and I remember even Dave Broadwell got up and left, and he didn't say a word. But when that happened, I thought, oh my God, I'm shooting myself in the foot here. Doesn't matter who's right or wrong. Just, we need a cohesiveness in the group. So I, in front of everybody, apologized to Chris. And it was sincere. I was really sorry. And I went over and we hugged. And that's instantly when this thing showed up.
Wow.
So is that a coincidence? Or, again, it's this consciousness connection, Grant,
Yeah. So what was your first trip? Where did you take off once did you have that same array of cameras, or they build up over the years?
Yeah, I just started off with a normal camera. Okay. And I originally went to one of the Greer expeditions. Okay. It was Durango, Colorado. And that was actually pretty incredible. We did have this spiral. It's on YouTube, and there's a spiral craft. I happened to see it during the break, and Cameron heard, he put his camera and did a time lapse of it, and you can see the painted in the frame, how it just goes around and around and around in a corkscrew fashion. I saw that sort of over in the circle, the people that were left during the break. I saw it right above Dr. Greer's head, but way off in the distance. That was interesting. The second thing that happened was I happened to just look over, and this sort of overgrown bush, you might, we're in the desert, so it's, you might consider it a tree, but all of a sudden it flashed like that there was a flash camera in the tree.
Oh,
And I was thinking, oh, is this a setup? You got to know that I'm just new to all this.
yeah.
And I'm starting to question, like, these expeditions cost a lot of money. Is this a setup to get money from people and get them thinking that they're seeing stuff?
Yeah.
So afterwards, I looked and there was no flash in the tree. There was no camera. Other people saw similar things during that night, during that session. So to me, that was pretty incredible. That was the thing that happened that really sealed the deal for me to continue on with this, because it's like, okay, I've seen this spiraling light going in the sky. I got it with my very first camera, but not very good. And that's when I said to myself, I have to get better cameras. I have to learn. So it started out with a very normal, simple camera, and it evolved over time, especially when there were sightings that I wasn't able to capture, but were seen. And it's like, well, how can I capture this? What do I need? Do I need thermal cameras? Do I need zoom? Do I need cameras that have very high ISO? Like, that's the sensitivity of them. Do I need night vision? What do I need? So the cameras have gradually evolved into what you see today, Brent.
Wow. And what I noticed with you with the cameras when you were in Manitoba was you reminded me of Bob Pratt. I followed Bob Pratt for the National Enquirer around in 75, 76. And the energy that he had resembled what you had. I remember we were in the cabin in southern Manitoba, and everybody's like, "Oh, I'm going to bed." And there's Rob. He's got all these films that he's looking through in the middle of the night. He's because he got 6 different cameras and he's going through all these things trying to find the stuff. And I remember Bob Pratt used to be sick. Could hear him. He was in the hotel room next to me, and he'd be in the middle of the night. He'd be typing his story for the National Enquirer, and it was like this energy that you had in terms of this pursuit of getting it, where everybody else would sort of, oh, there's nothing showed up tonight. Let's go to bed. And Rob wouldn't give up. He just like just
No,
the energy that you had was just unbelievable.
yeah, and I find, I've captured all this stuff because all the videos are running. And if we see something, then I'll mark down the time,
Yeah.
But quite often there can be stuff in the videos that you don't actually see, especially the time lapse stuff, Grant. There can be stuff that's moving very slow and you look up, oh, it's just a star. But you look in the time lapse and that thing has been slowly moving, but not even in a straight line. Okay, what's that all about? Right? Like maybe it moves here and then it moves here. And this is over 4 hours and it only went that far in the sky. What is it? What is
Yeah.
it? Now, we wouldn't have seen that, when you and I and Destin Mark were there, we wouldn't have seen that. I mean, we're looking right at it, but our eye could not capture that because it's slow. Yet when you look in the time lapse, you'll see it. It's very obvious, right? So there's things like that. So you got to look through the footage. And for me, it's like I got all this raw footage. Everybody wants to go to bed. I'm so excited. I want to look through it and I can't put it down, until I find something, right? And then finally I'll go to bed and get like 2 hours of sleep, and then in the morning, then I got to show everybody, this is what we saw last night, or we didn't see, but the cameras captured it. We had all our cameras set up. We were with Dave Palachuk from MUFON. He was with us for the week. And, I got the stuff home and I'm looking at it. He's gone to sleep. And I saw this thing in the infrared time lapse. This light slowly comes on over the minutes and even over half an hour, comes bright, completely illuminates the sky, and then it slowly goes back down again. This is like over several hours. Now, with our eye, we never saw it, but the infrared time lapse captured the entire event. And Dave did his measurements. You know, he's very good from the scientific point of view and the engineering side and figuring out the math and all the triangulation, all that stuff. And he figured it out to be something in the middle of the lake. Like, what was it? It's nothing we have, but it slowly came on, lit up the sky in the infrared, not in the visible, and then slowly went out. And where it was in the lake, there was nothing else. There was no lighthouses. There was no navigational buoys. You know, there were ships that were traversing the lake, which were all caught in the. Sorry, there's a fly here buzzing me. There were ships that were, you know, we could see them going across in the infrared and in the time lapse and so on. But this was something strange. And he even sent it to MUFON US, so they have a record of this and so on. Nobody knows what it was. And this is the kind of thing we get, Grant. We have very strange, cool, high, strange experiences as well. And the more you follow this phenomenon, the more you will have this, it's surrounded with cool, high, strangest experiences. Like for us, it's like the lights in the sky is the eye candy. And as you say, you know, people ask you, why do they have lights? And you said, if they didn't have lights, nobody would notice them, right? They want to get your attention, you know. But we have found that the lights in the sky is only a very small part of this phenomenon. It's the
That's
stuff
how we
that,
met you. The weird stuff. I met you. Desta forgot about that. We met you in Toronto, where I heard, oh, we were doing this book on ports, and they said, oh, this Rob's got this check, and we won't get into the story, but this bizarre story about this check, which still I have a hard time telling it because it's so bizarre to try to
yeah,
explain to people what that check thing was about with the multiple checks and stuff like that, and you get that weird paranormal stuff that goes around not only the lights. It's sort of like you rip the veil or something, and all the stuff starts coming through.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the amount of physical things that we've had happen.
Yeah, I to me it's this I call it the theory of wow, where they do this kind of stuff where you just like they don't intend you to figure it out. If you've heard the line by Jim Semivan, the high level CIA guy, he said it lies to you, it leads you along, but it never takes you home to meet the family. Like it's never going to tell you what's going on. It's like it gets you so far, and you're just intrigued, and then it just leaves it like that, like, and you're left scratching your head, and it just sort of it's like almost like shattering naive reality that you believe the world is flat and it has nuts and bolts and stuff. And the more you're in this field, the more you realize, like, nah, it's probably not how it works. It's much more complicated, and it gives you sort of respect for the fact that the world is with its expression. It's not only more complicated than you think, it's more complicated than you can ever imagine.
And for us, we call it cool, high, strangeness. If something doesn't happen, then we're very disappointed. But usually something happens that we consider cool, high, strangeness on every expedition, whether it's with the people on the expedition or whether it's our close friends or family back home. There's always something that happens that's unexplainable. And,
Yeah.
you know, it seems that as you get into this phenomena, Grant, it chases you. If you chase it, it will chase you as well.
Yeah, and it keeps you interested. It keeps you down the sort of the rabbit hole in terms of when you think it's all over, then the thing. And with the way you described, like that's the important thing where I wrote the book on it, where they'll put it back when they put it back, they put it right on top of something, or they'll put a dime in the middle of the bathroom, the in the shower or in the middle of the tub or something, right where you there's no way you could explain how it ever got there.
But sometimes it's also where we feel very strongly. We all get a very strong feeling. Okay. For example, when we caught the Squamish orb north of
Yeah, let's talk
Vancouver.
about that because that was one of your big hits, right? That was one
Yeah.
of your direct hits.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah. We were invited out to Vancouver by Charles Lamoureux. And we were out in the parks around Vancouver and we didn't see that much. And we had one more day left. And we said, well, Charles, where can we go? And he says, well, go up to Britannia Beach. People have seen stuff up there, and that's maybe an hour north. And we said, you want to come with us, Charles? And he says, no, the forecast is for rain. So I'm just going to stay home. And no problem. So it was Liz, it was Marcus, it was myself, and it was Breslin, the four of us. We go up to Britannia Beach. It's right on the coast there. And we weren't feeling it. And we've had that happen many, many times, including the beach at Playa, where we first were going to set up. We didn't feel it. It's almost like you're feeling this negativity. That's how we describe it, is we look at each other and Mark and I, we just shake our head to each other. We say, no, I'm not feeling it. It just doesn't feel right. And we could reason it out too and say there's different reasons. But at Britannia Beach, didn't feel right. And we stopped into this craft store and there were these two ladies and we said, do you see anything around here? And they said, no, but if you drive further to Squamish, BC, they see a lot. There's this big monolith mountain that kind of goes straight up. And they said, people have seen a lot of things around the chief, they call it. And they said, we advise you to go up there. So we went up there, and of course the weather wasn't that great. There had been scattered showers and stuff. And I'm like, with my equipment, I don't really want to get it out if it's raining. It takes a while to put it together, and having to take it down in a hurry can be cumbersome. So we go up to Squamish and we see the chief, and we thought, yes, this is starting to feel right. And we were driving sort of in behind. We drove around the town and we could see it from the town, but it didn't feel right. Didn't feel right. So we headed back into the lumber roads, the logging roads, further back away from the town. We came across this one spot where we had a perfect view of the chief. And we kind of stopped the car, we look at each other, and we all agreed, this is it. And we all said, I felt we're going to see something here tonight. We all felt it. So, I set up the equipment, you've seen the video. Breslin's over on the rock. She's doing a meditation and I've got my cameras set up. And, through the evening, we're at that point in the time of where we were evolved with the equipment, I had my cameras on, but none would be running, recording. Okay. And so I was talking to Marcus and at one point, and Breslin said, oh, there's a light. And I look over and my first thought was it was a private plane with its landing light on. And my first thought also was, which camera am I going to turn on? Which camera will I be able to get in the viewfinder first? And my immediate thought was the night vision zoom. Okay, so I turned the camera, I went away from Mark, I grabbed the camera, I hit record, and it was the night vision zoom, the green, which gets into the infrared a little bit. And I was following it and I thought, which other camera should I turn on also? And I thought, Rob, don't take your attention off of this. You've got one camera running, leave it at that. If you even move your eye away from the screen for the other cameras, you're going to lose it. Don't be an idiot. Right? Don't try to capture it in all the cameras. You got it in the camera, be happy with that and just follow it. You're getting something really cool happening. So I followed it and it was only like 10 seconds long and there was no sound. It was very bright light. It was like a yellowish color. Okay. And then I followed it into the woods. It's like, oh my God, it's going. And you can hear my surprise in the video. I said, it's in the woods. And we followed it for a bit and it lit up the trees behind and the trees in front. And then it went further into the woods. So we lost it, but we had 10 seconds of it. Right. And we're all excited. And the first thing we did was, okay, let's review the video. And we played it back and we thought, first thing we got to do is send it to Charles. Okay. He was supposed to be there, but chose not to be. So I sent it to them and I said, Charles, is this the ISS? It seemed way too bright to be the ISS, Grant. But I thought, we cannot rule out anything. we go through our checklist all the way down, right? And many times we're left at the bottom with a big question mark. But rule out everything like is it satellites, is it birds, is it a helicopter, a plane, like ISS, what is it? And that's why, as Mark says, it is the weapon of mass debunction, right? Weapon of mass detection, weapon of mass debunction. It really helps us rule out what it's not. Okay. And sadly, many sightings, we rule them out to be just mundane things. But you have to accept reality, and you have to accept that. We like when we get the cool stuff, but you can't lie about it either. We feel if we start lying about what we're seeing, we're going to get cut off. They're going to say, sorry guys, we're going to go see somebody else now. But anyway, Charles took the sighting and he did his math and all that, and he said it's not the ISS. The ISS went through there about 10 minutes ago. So he said it's not the ISS. And we had so many people after swearing that it was the ISS. So we said, we're going to go back. And we actually did another expedition where we went back and we just got all the mathematics of it, the GPS, all that stuff to prove to ourselves that it was not the ISS. And it came up that it was not the ISS. So what was it? And I think, Mark, you can remember what Dave determined it to be.
Yeah, it was Dave did the whole report on it. It was like 6 to 8 feet wide. Like he did all the math on it. Same thing with the ISS, like all the math. It was like no sound. Like it became one of the top 12 sightings in that year, So that was also very, very exciting. And it was great too, because it's been put in multiple programs. It's been on the History Channel and CNN. Like it always shows up in some sort of a program because it was real. I mean, I was there when it happened, and I remember coming out and taking quick video shots, and everything was there and happening, and that kind of became, I don't know, I would say the signature moment, the quintessential moment where we knew we were putting together like real-time sightings with footage. So that had never been done. I mean, there's a lot of that in the book too. It's like, not too many people have the opportunity to go on location, film something, and get something on camera as a sighting or experience, and then be able to document, with the witnesses, everything. So it's all very real time, and it provides a very it's a very interesting experience for the viewer and hopefully the reader too.
Yeah. And then, about a week after we captured it, I had the brain flash that we needed to contact the newspaper there. It's like, this is their town, this is their area, this is news that they should be aware of. So we simply contacted them and they interviewed us, and we sent them the footage and stuff. So it's documented in the local newspaper.
Wow. So how many countries have you been to, and like, can you name some of the groups? Like, I think you dealt with the Mission Rama people.
Yeah.
Can you go through some of that stuff as to where you've been and what kind of stuff you run up against?
It's funny, Grant. I think we did a tally, didn't we, Rob, of 19 countries, and that was only 4 days ago.
Yeah.
We've been, throughout South America, obviously, like Ecuador, Colombia, Peru, a couple of times to Peru, Chile, the Atacama Desert. And it's always really interesting, to be in this part of the world in South America, because it's very accepted here. This is like, it's not like anyone's hiding anything or saying, there's not even documentation. I mean, we've had sit down talks with people in the army, and that have they've sung like birds, and you ask them that, you say, man, you're just giving away the farm here, like you're telling us everything. And they say the same thing to us. Well, why would we hide it? We're thinking, well, it's hidden in other parts of the world. Like other parts of the world, it's a whole other different kind of dynamic. So in addition to South America, we've been throughout Europe. We've been to United Kingdom and England, Wales, Ireland, Scotland. A lot of that is in the book. I mean, because the 2015, a lot of our our first 8 countries involved Europe and, and Australia. Australia was very prolific. We met some fantastic experiencers, that took us out to these different places. And yes, Mission Rama. I mean, Mission Rama, one of the forefathers of Mission Rama was Sixto Paz Wells, who, appears in the last chapter of the book, because again, pretty miraculous. He just decided to meet us, got a hold of him, and before we knew it, we're in his backyard. We don't even understand how he just opened up his doors to us. He did. And it was an incredible experience, because we even asked him, like, why did you want to meet us? Why did you want to talk to us? And he even said, I knew that this was the right thing to do. Like, you're doing this, like, you're in the field. And we really appreciated what you wrote too, Grant, for the book, because, being in the field, I mean, you can call it civilian investigator, you can call it anything, researcher. There's nothing like being in the field. There's nothing like being there with the people in the mountains of Peru and, the deserts. And there's nothing like talking to a woman in her kitchen who's making food and talking about how this object lit up her kitchen. Like, these are things that you can't replace. So it's like, but the most, I would say, Rob, probably the most fascinating thing for us is the cultural representation. Like, how each culture has their own way of looking at the phenomena and talking about the phenomena, understanding the phenomena. And we've been really privy, because it's like we've gone to university for the last 9 years. It's not saying that we have a PhD or anything, but it's like you learn from so many people, you get so much information, and then you get the opportunity to take all that knowledge and take it in the field and see what you can find out for yourself.
And what the idea always comes up about the good guys and the bad guys. Well, what's your experience over all these different cultures in terms of the phenomena? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it neutral? What are they doing? What's your bottom line conclusion?
What do you think about that, Rob?
You define that a little more, Grant? Define that a little more.
Well, in terms of like, there's always the debate about good and bad. You've had a lot of contacts with a lot of people who've had experiences. You've had experiences yourself. So where do you put this on in terms of, like, the whole thing in the U.S. now is the slide 9, the Congress slide 9 with its threat scenario. Well,
Okay.
we've got to militarize, and then the whole idea about in the bottom line is what's going on? Like, what's this all about?
Yeah, I guess, we have not had any negative experiences. Now, there are groups of people say there's the good guys and the bad guys with ETs. When I was a kid, my dad always taught me, do not go to the bad side of town. If you do that, you're going to risk getting hurt. Now, we have not had any bad experiences. We've not had any sort of experiences with ET or ET craft or ET phenomena. Nothing that's bad. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. We just don't want to be any part of it. We don't want to get hurt. I mean, so everything we've experienced personally, it's always positive, and there seems to be this benevolent side to it. And we hear so many stories about people being helped. I mean, there's stories of a news helicopter that, the engine quit, and this news helicopter started falling. And all of a sudden, a craft appeared, a beam of light appeared, like almost like a tractor beam. And the helicopter stopped in midair, and this craft took it up into the air. And during that time, the pilot was able to get the engine started again. And when he was able to take back control and fly this helicopter, the light disappeared, the craft disappeared, and it was gone. There's many benevolent stories like that. There's stories, for example, out west, not even too far from you, south of you, where, craft had been seen over the military base. And then out of nowhere, the hangar doors where the missiles with the nuclear tips, the doors came open mysteriously, and the actual missile started going up, that it was going to be launched with nuclear warheads. And then, as mysterious as they opened up and they were going to be launched, the process stopped and it reversed and the doors closed. And the US government, the operators, the military, had no control over that. So that was like a statement. That's like, we can do whatever we want. And many people say, well, are ETs here to look after us? Are they watching over us? And many people will say, yeah, they have been here for many years, many thousands of years. And if they wanted to do us in, they could have done us in a second. So, what's all this negativity that's being launched around this subject? Is it because the US military wants to get funding? And if they push the negative foe, uh, attitude, then get people scared, then the purse strings come open and Congress will give all these millions and billions towards this. So, from our point of view, we have not had anything negative. We don't want to get involved with anything negative. That's why I say about what my dad said as a kid. Now, is there anything negative around this? Maybe there is, probably is. And there's people that can tell you all kinds of things. For example, Skinwalker Ranch. There are people that have been hurt there health wise. Now, is that ET related, or is that more something that exists there that's natural with the earth, Grant? Some kind of, gamma rays or something that are naturally being emitted from the earth that is harming the people. I mean, there's lots of things that are natural in this earth that will hurt you. You have to avoid. Volcano lava, don't put your foot in that. Your foot will melt. You know, Even a volcano crater where there's sulfur gas coming out, if you venture down there, you're going to die from the sulfur gas. Is Skinwalker Ranch a similar thing? Is there something happening there that is natural, nothing to do with ETs, that is harmful? Okay, so people could say, oh, there's ETs that come there and there's something harmful. So the harmful side is ETs. Well, we don't know. We just don't know. So you asking me about the good ones and the bad ones, we don't know anything about the bad ones or even if there are bad ones. What we have discovered, and maybe it's just our attitude and our intention, we are only interested in connecting with the good guys.
Yeah, that's my next question is like these, what I always point out with the Skinwalker Ranch was you had the guys who were hunting the Skinwalker, are special forces guys armed, and their attitude was, we're going to capture this thing. And the phenomena says, oh, you want to play that game? Oh, we can play that game. Yeah, we'd love to play that game. And it's like, so is there a reflective nature? Because I know when you were in Manitoba, you would go through the CE5 protocols in terms of getting right. Are you part of the process in terms of seeing stuff?
Well, here's the thing, there's different parts of our own being. For example, we can, you can tune in on different levels, whether it's telepathy, whether it's, there's psychic things and so on. And many people feel that if you want to sort of connect with this phenomenon or the ETs, you've got to get yourself into a state where that can happen. And if you're in your left side, your intellectual, controlling, ego-based, reasoning side, your left brain, it's probably not going to happen. If you can let go of all that, Grant, and move to the right side, which is where, all these other abilities that we have manifest, they're all natural things that we can do, but most people don't even know how to connect to them. And how to do that is to get relaxed. And these CE5 protocols can be part of that, like doing meditation, getting yourself out of the left brain, moving over to the right brain where you can sense, some people say telepathic connections and so on. If you can move to that right side of the brain, that's where it exists. And if you're going to make a connection, that's where it will be. So, let go of the intellectual side, get over to the sensing side, the psychic side, the side where the possibility that you might get telepathic messages, the possibility that you are connecting and sending messages to the ETs. Maybe I did that when I was a kid. and don't forget, when kids are young, they literally are in the right brain. Their real intellectual side doesn't develop till, as you go through puberty and you become a young man. Okay. So when you're a kid, you literally are connecting to all these other things that exist. But as you get older, that kind of gets pushed away and you're, totally in your left brain, that intellectual side. You got to let
Yeah,
go of that. Yeah. So
everything shut down.
yeah, it
What
really is.
what about people? What about people? You've been to lots of countries, a lot of places that were rumored to have, phenomena. What about the people? Like you dealt with Chris Bledsoe, Sixto Paz as well, Ricardo Gonzalez. Have you run across people that when you met them, bizarre things happened, or you realized these are people who are a little bit different in terms of being able to actually tap into this phenomena?
Well, for example, you've met Chris, you've been at his
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
He's he's a great guy, and you could almost say he's kind of childlike in a way. And he's very sincere, and what you see is what you get. And he's not a guy that deceives people. I think he's totally able to connect into his right brain, Grant.
Yeah.
And for that reason, he's able to connect with the phenomena. He's able to call it. And the amount of experiences that he's had. I mean, I've spent hours talking to him myself privately. When we
Have you
were
been to his house? Have you been to his property
not
there?
not yet.
No,
He's
not yet.
invited. He's invited me to. He's invited me to.
That's
I'd
one.
love to.
That's one of the ones I think you should put on your list for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Because he
But
claims he's filming every night. He's claiming 1,500 videos or whatever. It's like it's like a playground in his backyard or whatever. So yeah,
yeah,
okay,
but at the Monroe Institute, when we had our seminar
yeah,
there for the whole week, I mean, he told us a lot of stories of things that have
yeah.
happened to him, including all the stuff he writes about in his book and more. And there's no doubt in my mind that he has a connection. And I would love to go to his place, and I would love to take my equipment.
Have
And
you been to Mount Shasta?
we've been to Mount Shasta twice, Mark, I guess.
Yeah,
And
we
And,
have been
and
there on two different occasions. Yeah, I mean, and both of them are very interesting because Mount Shasta is definitely it's an energy spot,
were you
But
with
also
with the
Mount
Mission
Shasta
Alma
has a
people?
lot of legend, right? Grant, you wrote a book about Mount Shasta. I mean, it has a lot of legends when it comes to the base. There's a base in the mountain and all kinds of different things.
I
So
got a great
yeah,
story. I got a great story for you, Grant.
Yeah,
Um, and we do our meditations. We
yeah,
once again we feel we've just got to let go.
yeah,
Let go of all the intellectual stuff, connect heart to heart, if
yeah.
such a thing is possible. Anyway, we were at Mount Shasta. We were at an Airbnb that had a beautiful view of the mountain, right? We were with, what's the name of the fellow there, Mark?
oh, we were with Leon Valverde.
No, but the guy that has a huge group of people and his
Oh,
wife.
Costas and
Yeah,
Hollis. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
I'm getting
yeah.
older, so my memory is
Justice.
going,
Yeah,
weird these
yeah,
days. And we love him and his wife.
yeah.
But anyway, I had all the equipment set up, Grant. I had it, aimed at the mountain and so on. And we were doing, the C5 protocols, do our own protocols, just let go, try to connect and, breathe slow, just do all these things. For us, it's just second nature, slow down, disconnect from all the busyness and just allow yourself to sense and be there, right? So I had my cameras running. We were doing a meditation. We were all standing up and everybody was quiet. You could hear a pin drop and we're outside. And all of a sudden I heard a man's voice, Evika. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And I immediately grabbed my phone out of my pocket. I tapped the screen. It came on and I did a screenshot because, I got 8 hours of video on every camera. How will I find this? So as soon as I heard that voice, that man's voice, Evika, I did the screenshot so I could go back later to that exact spot in the video on all the cameras. And I thought to myself, my first thought was, we were supposed to be in a group. Have some of the guys gone off and are talking? So for me, it was a little annoying. We were to be doing this meditation in quiet, and all of a sudden there's like voices off 30 feet away. For me, it was distracting. It's like, I'm not happy. We're supposed to be cohesive and as a group, just get quiet and no speaking. And now I hear man's voice as if some of the guys have gone off for a smoke or something away from the group. That's what I thought. But I heard the word Avika. So we continued on with the meditation and, we filming and all that. And there's, great evening with everybody and so on, stories. And, they're always great times. We enjoy these. And here I am. I go back to our Airbnb where we're literally only, 500 feet away from there. It was a house out in the country that had a view right off the mountain. And once again, I get into the footage, right? And everybody's gone to bed. I go to the footage and I play it, and it's Avika. And the next, on all of the cameras. So the next day, Dan Berg was with us, and I knew that Dan did not know the stories about Avika and Antarel, ET beings. So I said, Dan, I just innocently said, pardon me. I said to him, I played it back and I said, what does this sound like to you? He says to me, it sounds like, he says, it's a man's voice. It sounds like he's saying Avika. And I said, Dan, do you know who Avika is? And he said, no, who's Avika? I said, Avika and Antarel are the sort of famous ETs that are resident at Mount Shasta.
And Rob, you should sort of interrupt. We should include the fact that 2 months before that, we had been in Peru with Ricardo Gonzalez. And everything about that 18 days with Ricardo and everyone that we were with, there was so much talk about Antarel and Avika. And then 2.5 months later, we're in Mount Shasta and this occurs.
Exactly. So, we've actually, what we believe is, an ET, a male ETV, Antarel likely giving the voice, saying about Avika, so we have that's recorded. So, and that was at Mount Shasta.
My story. My story about that, eh?
Oh yeah.
With Avika. Yeah, they got a message from Avika and Antarel when I was there with the program sighting and all that kind of stuff. It'd be interesting because they have the events there, because the way they always propose it is you're not allowed to go to the Airbnb down at the bottom. You got to be up there in the harsh climate, 2 degrees below freezing, and in your tent and stuff like that. And that's interesting. I didn't know that. You may have told that story, but I don't really. When you said Avika, I'm going Avika. It's like wow, because that's and yet it's the same sort of thing. It's like a breadcrumb, but it really doesn't get you anywhere. It's sort of like it just makes you think like, wow, I mean, that's just amazing. Or it may be connected to this other stuff, and yet you can't put it together. And it's just this theory of wow, where they're stories. They want you to tell stories, and I tell stories. We're all telling stories, and people are just fascinated with it. And I guess that's Mark's thing is you need the film guy who can sort of string it all together and tell the story, because that's the way people learn the best in terms of they remember stories, they go to movies and stuff like that. If you use the rational analytical and try to use analysis, it doesn't work. You need a film guy to sort of string it together in a story where people are sort of sitting on the edges of their seats.
Well, it's a big thing for us too. It's a big thing for us. I mean, with something in the beginning that Rob and I said to each other was, if we have the opportunity to inspire and educate, then that's what we'll do. You know what I mean? Like, even if all this material ends up in one of those time capsules in the middle of the desert, and, a group of students or whoever finds it 50, 100 years from now, at least they can say, wow, look at this moment in time. These two guys connected to 300, 400 different people across hopefully maybe 30 plus countries at that time, we hope.
Yeah.
But look at all these stories. At least you've archived all of these experiences, And then people can say, well, wow, I can connect this to something I've experienced, or, I had a friend who had this happen. And so, yeah, it became a responsibility, a beautiful privilege, honestly.
Yeah. And Grant, and over these years, Mark's a superb filmmaker. So documenting everything film wise. And now he's written this book with me. I mean, he's written it. He's taken all our experiences, and it's all backed up by film. I mean, all the pictures he's got in the book, all the stories, these are all based on, interviews of people he's spoken to. And it's all based on, not based on, it's the actual experiences that we've had. And he's documented. And I will say too that, we always like to experiencing everything together. Because it's one thing if somebody sees something, and even if it's part of your group, and it's like, well, do you really believe them? Right? I wasn't there. I don't know. He says this happened, but did it really? When you've got at least two people who have witnessed it, then yes, it did happen. And, I would say literally 100% of the experiences Mark has written, I mean, we've all experienced them together, including, and I don't know if this one is in the book, but we had that earthquake in Mark's room in the Airbnb in Lima, Peru, where he comes running out of his room at like 3 a.m. His eyes are like saucers. It's like, Mark, chill out. No, no, there's an earthquake in my room. And, and, and literally the tile floor was cracking and pushing together and all going up like this. I grabbed my phone. I went into his room and started filming. I've got it happening live where you can see the tile going up like this. And there were these white orbs flying around also, Grant. I don't think I've told
Wow.
you that story. And
No, no, I've heard that. No.
you love the orbs. So we have that on film. So he had a personal earthquake in his room only. Okay, now
Wow.
how do you explain this stuff to people? Like,
Yeah.
so okay, he was experiencing it on his own. And by the way, it was the same night that we lost my good laser out at Chilca Desert with Ricardo. And
Okay.
to buy those lasers in Canada are like $300. The laser
Yeah.
disappeared and nobody knew where it was. I wasn't happy about that, right?
Yeah.
We don't shine lasers at anything in the sky. We draw circles around it, by the way, if anybody
Yeah. Yeah.
says about lasers, just in case it could be an airplane. And that laser appeared later in his room that night.
Yeah.
And then it was later, out of nowhere, he was just rolling in the bed and all of a sudden it was under him. Right. And then was it later, Mark, that same night that you had the earthquake? Or was that
Yeah,
a
that was
different?
all part. It was all
Yeah.
kind of part of a 24-hour successional kind of moment in time. I'll never forget the laser thing though, because I'd been laying on the bed. I was laying up flat on the bed and I was charging my batteries. I was plugging my batteries in. So I'm very aware, right? Like I'm laying out and I'm doing that. And then I went to the washroom and I came back and it would have been lying right where the middle of my chest was. And I'm like, how do you not feel like a
Yeah.
laser, like a metal tube, like, in the middle of your chest? And I'm like, no, that just showed up there the second that I left and came back. And then that same night, I don't know, I was up until probably 3:30 in the morning and I wasn't feeling very well. Like I actually felt physically sick. And then I heard everything in the room. Like I heard this cracking and I was like, what's coming through the walls? Like, is it an animal? Like, are these rats? Like, I don't know what's going on here. And everything started happening. I went out into the hallway and I got Rob and Bill, and they were across the room. They didn't hear anything. They didn't know what was going on. They had no idea. It didn't happen in their room. Of course, we Googled the fact that, was there a tremor or anything in Lima? No, none of that at all. And then I found audio. I don't know if this means anything. I mean, sometimes you go too far and you read into it, but I found audio of myself, like I don't know, like I was a little bit of like, what's going on here in this room? I had recorded myself on my iPhone. You're
And
talking about
and you didn't remember talking about it.
No, I didn't recall any of it all. I don't know if that's a
Yeah.
missing time thing. I have no idea. All I know is that I took the time to record myself, and I was saying very different things, like I don't feel well. Like I said that in the audio. I don't feel well. Are you here? Like all these different things, right? And I have no idea what that means. But that whole trip to Peru. It's all part of book 3, volume 3. But that whole trip to Peru was really interesting with Ricardo Gonzalez.
Wow. Have you got a video, like, you talk maybe a little bit about your videos? Have you got a video where you show the weird stuff, like clips of
Absolutely.
the weird stuff? Yeah.
Yeah. I'll send you a link, Grant, because we did a whole video about the earthquake and everything in my room with all the rocks footage, and everything's all live. I'll send you the link on that.
We're waiting to get our stuff confiscated. Like, when are you going to come and confiscate our stuff so we can do a story around that, right? All these people will get stuff and they'll hide it, and then all of a sudden they get a visit, right?
Yeah.
And we learned very early in the game, don't hide anything, just put it out there right away.
Yeah.
And we're wondering, like, okay, are we going to get a visit from the Men in Black? The closest we've come to the Men in Black is a license plate on a vehicle in front of us. And the guy in Scotland who we interviewed, and he was talking about Men in Black. And then literally as he's talking, we look at the car in front of us in Scotland, and there's MIB on it.
Yeah.
So we haven't had any run-ins with government. We're still waiting. We do want to go to Area 51. There is a spot where it's quite a ways back. It's up in the mountains, and we have a fellow and his girlfriend who are willing to take us up there, and we'll take our camping stuff. He said, be prepared to be buzzed by the Army jets, and that they will try to shoo you away. And so we're kind of hoping we will attract them, and lots of stories to tell after, because obviously that proves when they try to shoo you away that they must have something to hide. But with our camera equipment that we have, Grant, we will be able to see right over to Area 51, and they won't want us filming that. So we are going to take the equipment up there. We are going to have an expedition up there, and then we'll wait till they show up, and maybe they will confiscate our SD cards, but that's okay. We will have the experience, and we can talk about it afterwards, what happened.
Yeah.
They probably won't.
Destin and I were at Area 51, and I posted the photograph. I said, here we are at the front gate of Area 51. And then Richard Doty wrote me and he said, you're at the wrong gate. You're at the Tonopah gate. He says, if you want, and I said, well, next time I come, maybe you can show me where to go. And he said, you come, I'll show you all the really interesting spots. So maybe I can set up Richard Doty to take you. He claims he can take you to spots that were really stuff will happen. So
that would be great. That would be great. Yeah. On the last expedition we went there, we captured a really neat sighting of a craft coming across the mountains, and it was flashing in a very strange way. And Dave Palachuk has looked at it, and he's told us that, based on all the people he's spoken with, and, scientific people and so on, he said that it very well may be an experimental craft of the U.S. government that are using ET technology. But he said what is happening in the video that we have is the energy is being dumped. Okay, in other words, they have to dump the energy before they land this craft. Now, whether it's an actual ET craft or whether it's just an experimental, one of our crafts that is using ET technology, it may very well be that, but we captured it on film. The way it's flashing, it's just pulsating, and it's just seems to be just giving all this energy off. That was maybe a year and a half ago or something we captured that. But we met that fellow and his girlfriend on that same expedition. We did want to go up to that spot, but he says, no, not with the vehicle you have. You have to rent like a very strong 4-wheel drive vehicle because it's a very bad road that goes up there. So, we just had a normal vehicle rented, and that would have been lost, in the very beginning.
And what about Skinwalker Ranch? I guess they're not going to let you on because they're doing the History Channel thing. Have you been around? Because I've got some contacts. There are ranches around there that have bizarre stuff. I showed some of them in like Men in Black photos from one of the ranches around
Maybe
there.
you want to come with us. I'm a little bit nervous. I was really excited to go to Skinwalker Ranch. We've got contacts as well. But then when all that strange stuff happening to what's that guy that used to work for the US, the guy in the blonde hair, um, uh,
U,
that
US,
speaks,
the
that works
oh
for the US
Travis
government.
Taylor,
Yeah, Travis. Yeah.
yeah.
When he started saying about all the bad things that have been happening where people have been hurt, like health wise,
Yeah, but
like
his was, he said this is all bull, and he got zapped, zip, zip, and I was laughing. It's like you just asked for it, man. It's like it's same as the guy who was that got injured, the guy with the front end loader. They said you know don't dig. That was the thing. Don't dig on the property. What's the first thing they did? Let's
yeah,
dig. He
yeah.
said not once that he's dug that something hasn't happened to either him or the front end loader. Anything else we've forgotten to talk about that you need to mention in
That's
terms of what's
fantastic,
going
Grant.
on?
We just appreciate the time.
Yeah,
That's great.
well, there's quite a few people who see it, and we're looking forward to the future stuff. It's always interesting to hear the stories you guys are telling. Thanks for appearing, and we'll catch you again. Maybe once you've got something happens, let's do a little quick video sometime. If something happens on one of your projects, and we'll go from there. And definitely, if you're going to one of these weird places, I'd like to go. If Skinwalker Ranch or the Chris's place.
Okay, we'll take you
Perfect.
up on that, Grant, for sure.
Okay,
Yeah, thank
beautiful.
you so much for having us on your show, Harker. So I
Yeah,
don't,
I always link it. I write about that. I always link it to the fact that it's related to your attitude. That if you, in fact, I've got the one guy he's near death now. He's my contact there, but he uh, talked about this idea that whatever you put out there is what you get back. And he talked about the one. He gave me the photograph of where he would actually go. He was doing ghost hunting. He was in the with a crypt in a what do you call it, a graveyard, and he demanded. He said, come on out, I want to film you." And he had the camera, and this thing came out of the crypt, and he actually catches us on film. It's unbelievable. And then he said the thing followed him around for 5 years,
oh my
and
God.
he learned from that. He said he moved to 3 different houses, and this thing kept following him around. And it was this thing, but he had this attitude. It's like, come on, I want to film you and stuff like that. And he actually shows the crypt, and there's this black thing on the side of the crypt. And he said it actually got bigger, but he grabbed the camera and he disassembled the camera and took off and learned his lesson. So I'm not too worried. And you haven't had any bad experiences. I think
No.
you
And
got to sort of set yourself. It's like whatever you're vibrating at, it's
I
this
think so.
co-resonance thing.
I
Wherever
think,
you're vibrating, it's like an Ouija board. People say an Ouija board's bad, but it's just an instrument.
mhm.
If you're negative and you're at a low vibration, you're going to pick up low vibration and stuff. It's like us saying, well, we're going to go to heaven. We're going to go. No, you don't get in there unless you vibrate at that level. Whatever you're vibrating at. So
Yeah.
so it
No, I think
and
it's true. And you got to be careful what you ask for, Grant.
yeah,
Be careful what you ask for. You're going to get it.
yeah,
And yeah, so we stay with good intentions, and we
yeah,
stay in the good part of town. But if you'd like to go to the Uinta Basin or whatever near Skinwalker, you really want
yeah.
to go, we can set up an expedition
Yeah,
for
because
sure.
there is some weird stuff. I had the guy from Los Angeles. He runs the LA, used to be the LA MUFON group, but it's not called the LA something or other.
Yeah,
He's a pilot guy, and he told a story, and he didn't go on the ranch, but he told me these bizarre stories about his cell phone. And you hear
yeah,
these stories about the cell phone, where he's a real estate agent, and he said he goes there the next day, and his cell phone, he sees all the entries going off his cell phone, all the entries into this phone thing, and then coming back on and stuff like that. It just he told these weird stories about just
yeah.
it followed him home. It was just bizarre, and it was nothing dangerous, but it was just this really weird stuff. He's just like, wow.
Oh,
And the
yeah.
abort stuff that was happening and stuff like that, which is so because that's the kind of stuff where even if you put it out, I mean, everybody's going to watch it because it's like, oh, Skinwalker Ranch, because and it's almost like the phenomena is like this raising of consciousness that it really doesn't have to really prove anything, but it's raising consciousness, because you can go into China, you can go into the deepest, darkest parts of Africa, and you say Area 51. Yeah, I know what that is. Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah, I know what that is. And it's raising this consciousness that near-death experience, people really don't. They may not want to believe it, but they know what it is, and that's where we're going. Is in the end, everybody's going to say, yeah, it's real. We know about that. And that's the thing, is the old people, almost like Planck says, an idea does not come by convincing your opponent that he's right. It comes with one funeral at a time. Your
Well,
opponent
exactly.
dies and the new generation. So we're
That's right.
raising the consciousness of these areas, even though we can't prove anything, where people know what we're talking about when you talk about Skinwalker Ranch or orbs or stuff like that. That it's part of a process that they don't want you to do. It's a learning process. It's not like we want to be like Americans, where we want everything yesterday. The phenomena is one little step at a time, just gradually, where we figure it out. That they're not going to give us the answer. As Jim Semivan said, they're never going to take you home. Or as the one guy with the Martin Luther, the theologian, I always tell the story about Martin. He asked, it was in a seance with Martin Luther, the theologian, and they asked him, they said, why doesn't God get off his rear end and come and tell us what's going on? And he said, because doubt is part of the equation.
That's
Without
right.
doubt, your soul would get wings and it would fly away and leave the body alone.
That's
It's like
right.
the whole idea is that the doubt is what gets going, and awe and curiosity are what moves science down the road. Unless there's awe and curiosity, if there's no awe and curiosity, there's no investigation. That's what it is. When you have your sighting at 12 years old, you're just in awe, and you're trying to figure out what it is, and that's what drives you. That's what makes people do the research. And if without that, there would be no research.
Well, it's true, Grant. And when we were in Italy, we were on that one mountain. We're in a lodge on the mountain high up above the tree line. And, I had my cell phone and I hadn't charged it. So it had maybe 20%, maybe
Yeah.
30% left. And I said to myself, should I go back up to the room and get the battery? And I had, oh no, it's going to be fine, And so we get up to the top where stuff had been seen before, lots of stuff. And I grabbed my phone and it was dead. And I thought, shit, I should have charged it. And I made a joke. I was by myself. The other people were just, Marcus and everybody, they were a little bit, maybe 30 feet away. And I said out loud, I said, oh, guys, you can come out now. I can't record you anyway. My phone's dead. Grant, I turned my head and there was a saucer going across in front of the mountain. Okay.
Yeah.
And I saw it. And then I says, oh yeah, and probably I'll get back to the lodge and my phone will be on again. Yeah. As a joke, as a sarcastic joke, right? So we continue, Mark's doing his interviews there with everybody from, Italy that we met and stuff. And get back down to the lodge. I take at the lodge where we're at, there's a room right by the front door. As you just go in, you take your shoes off because, there's cow patties everywhere from the cows that go everywhere on the mountain. And they don't want that tracked through the lodge. Yeah. So you take your boots off and you leave them there. So I sat down on the wooden bench and I thought, oh, I'll take my phone out of my pocket so I don't damage it against the wooden bench. And I look, the phone's on. Okay. And I told Mark, I says, Mark, my phone came back on. That was exactly what I made a joke about, right? He and one of the other guys were in that same room. There's a bathroom at the end, and then there's windows across. And this is what Mark alluded to in the story there. What were they seeing going across? That same saucer that I did. They were seeing it go across. Both of them witnessed it. The same one. And there you go.
It's amazing how it plays. It's like, I don't know if you know the story about Enrique. Like if you go up with Ricardo does one every August, and Enrique does. Yep. I went to both of them. I wrote a book on each of their experiences. But Enrique talks about where he's got his cell phone, and he goes to the outhouse and he pulls his cell phone out and he's got 5 bars. He said, "I've never had 5 bars because they're up 4,000 feet on the sand flat." And so he's going, hold on. So he's sitting there and he's looking at the news and stuff with 5 bars in the outhouse, and he comes out and the whole mountain is lit up. And he goes, the city, the whatever they called, whatever the name of that city is, and it's completely lit up. The whole city. And he goes, my God, the story's true. There's a city there, and it's like thousands of lights on the mountain. And then he says, "Where's my camera? Oh, where's my camera? And he's running around trying to find his camera. And then he suddenly remembers, oh, I left it in the circle on the chair. And he gets his camera. And then by then the sun is starting to come up. And he gets these photographs. They're not very good, but you can see these lights, eh? And there's this line of lights, like they wanted him to go up the mountain to this thing. And it was just this bizarre thing where they control the whole thing, but you never get anything. So we've got the photographs in the book. They're not really that good, but
Yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
this
Wow.
guy, like the whole mountain is lit up. This story, this famous Talos is the city of Talos,
Yeah,
where all
yeah,
everybody lives under the mountain. And he
yeah,
says
yeah.
it's surreal. He said like literally thousands of lights, and he's trying to find me. What tent is Grant in? What tent in? And then these two women come out, and I remember in the morning they were telling the story. And even though they can get the photograph, these two women, they're drawing it in the ground, and they're yelling, and they just, oh, it's unbelievable. It's describing this thing on the mountain and stuff like that. And yet nobody got it on this. It becomes a story that you
Yeah.
just repeat, and these people repeat and stuff like that. And people know, I don't know if they believe it or not, but it was fascinating.
Well,
It's
and I swear, Grant, if they don't want you to film it, you won't get
yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
they're in
And that's
control.
what
I
I
mean,
think they,
because a lot of people
yeah,
criticize me. They say, you've got 150 grand worth of cameras. How come you don't have more? Well, it's because
yeah,
they won't let me get more. They let me get
yeah,
what we get, and that's it. You know,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I've got
That
that
that's
one
not
picture.
everybody wants, when are they going to give you the answer? They're never going to give you the answer.
Yeah.
Even like Jim Semivan, when he complains and he goes like, I'm upset because they were in his room and stuff like that, and that they never asked for permission, and I'm still angry 30 years later or whatever. And it's like, well, you missed the point, man. I mean, he's the guy that went to the New York Times with the story. He's the guy that set this whole disclosure thing up. If he had not had that experience, there would be no disclosure today.
That's right.
They're setting him up, and he's still angry about what happened in the thing in it 30 years ago, and yet it's a curiosity thing. It's you get everybody telling stories and everybody going, and nobody's got the full picture, and yet consciousness is rising as we're going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody knows what this is, and everybody, you get 10% of the people say it's all bullshit, but the other people say, yeah, it's probably true or whatever. And that's what happened in 2017. Our consciousness has gotten to the point that when they said the government is doing UFOs, everybody went, yeah, I knew that already. Nobody jumped off a bridge. Nobody committed suicide. Nothing happened. It was like everybody just went on with their life, and it became accepted, almost like the idea of gay marriage. I always say to people, when did gay marriage become legal? And they go, I don't know, 20 years ago, 25. And it just happens. Nobody really knows when it actually happened. It
No.
just will happen. And
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And disclosure will be the same way. Like
Yeah.
nobody will know when it actually happened, but it's like everybody will know that it's real.
And yet you and I got to play in the game. And that's the biggest thing is we
Yeah.
got to play this. What more could you ask for? I mean, in
Yeah.
terms of an exciting life, in terms of what we've been able to experience, if you understand what's going on. And I
Yeah.
think you and I understand that this is pretty significant, whatever it is.
Oh, I
It's
wouldn't
not,
give it up for anything, Grant, because
yeah,
it's like you look at everybody going about their daily jobs and it's like
yeah,
they don't know a thing. Like they
yeah,
don't know what the real world is. They're living in
yeah,
this bubble
yeah.
and they don't even know all the real things that happen on this earth. They don't have a clue. More and more people are now, I guess, but in general,
But to
so
them
many
it's
people
still
don't.
just a story. It's like
Yeah.
my kid. My kid was a pilot. He had a sighting, but he just doesn't interested. That's why I'm putting all my files online. It's been 100,000 pages of files that I'm putting online because I went to the University of Manitoba and they didn't want the files. I got the presidential files. I've got all these the Canadian government files and Wilbur Smith's files and stuff like that. Nope, not interested. And I went, what? They've got Chris Bledsoe's or Chris Rukowski's 20,000 UFO sighting files. And I'm going, well, that's just sighting files. I mean, I've got the president stuff. I've got all this stuff, and they didn't want. And that's when you realize, like, people really aren't interested. In the bottom line is it's a phenomenon that's getting more and more popular all the time. But in terms of most people, they don't really see it, and you have to have the
Yeah.
experience to see it.
You really do. And most people, they've just got their work, their family,
Yeah,
and
and
go
you
to the
can't blame
grocery
them.
store.
Yeah,
And that's all they
it's
can
not their
handle.
role. That's why
Well,
I asked you the question at the beginning. I always ask that, do you think you're on a mission? Do you think this is part
yeah,
of it?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
most people, like with me, it was like all my friends, nobody was interested. Nobody could care less. And a lot of them saw it. They just weren't interested. And I was
Yeah.
completely taken by the thing.
Well, and I can put it this way too. My partner Antonio, whose phone, the cracked
Yeah,
glass that
yeah,
disappeared, the screen healed itself, or went into
yeah,
another timeline. And I've said, Tone, are you having trouble believing with this? He says, well, yeah. He says, I can't think about it. He says, because, you know, he's a computer engineer and he's got to have his head in that for TD Canada Trust, you know, 9 to 5, right? And he said, honestly, if I start thinking about it, it really messes with my brain and I've got to concentrate on my work, which is hard enough. And he says, I can't afford to think about it. I said, well, do you believe it's true? And he says, maybe. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I believe it more than he does because I took the phone in my hand, I felt the glass.
Yeah.
And then when I got home from Colombia, I checked the serial number of the phone, Grant. I went into the phone, got all the numbers, same as the one I bought him, right? Nothing's
Yeah.
changed, but no longer is the glass cracked. It's perfectly smooth. And yet he's having trouble with it. It really messes with his mind because it goes against our normal thinking, right? And you know, maybe when he's retired, maybe he'll want to come on this stuff with me. But he, you know, he said, I just can't afford to. I have to concentrate on my job. First of all, because English is his second language. So it's hard enough when everybody talks real fast in English for him to understand. But you know, for a lot of people, they just want to block it out.
Yeah.
They
And
kind
they've got
of
their lives and their things that they've got to solve, whatever they came to the world
yeah,
to solve.
yeah,
It's like my kid. I mean, it's like you think my kid would be big into it, 50 years and stuff like that. And we got pictures, he was in crop circles in the
yeah,
1980s
yeah.
and stuff like that. He's had sightings, he's a pilot and stuff like that. My father had sightings and stuff. And so someone will ask him, so what's your father do? And then he says, put his name in Google, and then walks away. That's what he said. Don't even admit it. You said, put his name in Google and walk away. So that's the thing, is that you got to realize that we have our mission, and it's up to are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? And
Yeah,
I feel
exactly.
inclined that you can't let it go if you tried.
No,
You go
I
down the
can't.
rabbit hole, and but yet you consider that we're living at probably the most important time, 500 years ago. You
Yeah.
go, oh, those people were so lucky, they got to play, you know, and stuff like that. So
Yeah. And to
uh,
me, that's it. That's it, is having experiences, you know, meeting with people that are also having
yeah.
experiences, telling the stories and, you know, and just what we're experiencing, Grant.
Yeah,
You know,
and you
it's
get
just
friends all
incredible.
over the world. I mean, I remember my ex-girlfriend used to say, "Oh, you've got no friends." I said, "I got no friends. I could go to any state in the United States, and I would have somebody that I could go and stay with or whatever like that.
Stay
It's
for
just I don't
free.
have any friends here, or because nobody around here. It's like when you go to the parties, you know, and then someone knows you're into UFOs and they talk. It's always I tell that joke. You get excited and you start telling UFO stories, and then you look around and everybody else has sort of moved away,
I
and
know.
you're the
And
one.
well, and your own friends, you know, they just know you. Well, that's my, you know, friend I've known for years, Grant. And oh, I don't know, maybe he's into the UFO stuff. And what do they say? You're not a prophet in your own town.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, you're
But we
famous
got
all
lucky
over
enough.
the world. You're famous all over the world, Grant. But in
Yeah,
your own town, your own friends don't even want to hear about this, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Or that's the thing with the archives that I couldn't believe when they said no, they didn't want it. And it was actually good because like everybody says you put your stuff in archives and stuff like that. But what use is that? Like people they always said, go to Rice University. I said, have you ever been to Rice University and looked at the files, like Jacques Vallée's files there, Paula Harris, and there's all these files of Clifford Stone and stuff. You ever been to Rice University? No. Nobody's going to go to Rice. I was the one few guys that went to archives in my life, and nobody goes to archives. But if I put it online and I can give you the link, and you can go to 100,000 pages of all this different stuff and look. Yeah,
You
it's the
know?
same as you. You're just out there telling stories and putting it
Yep.
out for people to see, and they can believe it. They don't believe it. Who cares? I mean, it's there. It's raising consciousness as you go along, and the people who are interested will go down that road. And if you're not interested, you're doing something else. Good luck with what you're doing. Surprised me was the importance of the work of the blindfold work. If you understand what's going on, this is like absolutely destroys your idea of how the actual world actually works. And
Totally.
yet nobody seems to care. They
I know.
don't or the idea of like, I'll send you my new manuscript where I talk about this, and this idea, you know, people who are blind, who have near death experiences, and they've
Yep.
never seen in their life. They've been
Yeah.
blind from birth,
Yeah.
and they can see in these near death experiences and stuff. And you think, well, it's going to revolutionize the world, and everybody just goes, whatever.
They don't care.
They
They
just
don't
don't
care.
get it. They
I
just
know.
don't get it.
I know.